I mean, I know from my own experience actually that when my hormones started to go haywire, I became much more sensitive to gluten and wheat. And I noticed that I would just get kind of general puffiness everywhere. And, even just doing simple things like going from regular bread to sourdough bread, which is more easily digested, that actually made a big difference to me. But, thinking back then, this is going back sort of 10 years or more, I didn't actually relate it to hormonal changes, going on in the gut. Well, hello, welcome back to the Earle Wellbeing YouTube channel. And today I am delighted to be joined by Joanna Lyall. She is the CEO and the founder of the Better Menopause, and she's also a nutritional therapist. So today we're going to be talking about bloating in midlife and the fascinating connection between gut health and menopause symptoms. You will not want to go anywhere. But first, welcome, Joanna. It's so lovely to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
No, it's really good. I'm so looking forward to this chat because we're going to be focusing a lot on the gut today. And I wondered if you could first perhaps kick off by explaining why so many of us suffer with bloating and other symptoms in midlife especially.
Yeah, absolutely. So what we know now with the science is that our gut microbiome is affected by our hormones. So when our hormones start to, first of all, fluctuate and then decline, the gut microbiome responds to that. And the result of that can be that we then are ending up in some kind of dysbiosis in the gut. And that leads to many of the symptoms that we experience. So experiencing symptoms like bloating or IBS suddenly out of nowhere, irregular bowels, that type of thing.
Really interesting, actually, that there is that hormonal connection, isn't there? And what about things like food sensitivities? Because I think that's probably the first thing that people think of when they think about bloating and IBS and kind of general gut issues.
Yeah, generally, if you've got symptoms that are going on in your gut, like bloating or a change in your bowels, it's likely there's probably a food involved as well that your body has suddenly become sensitive to, that maybe you were never sensitive to before. And throughout our life, we might find that at some point we're sensitive to dairy, but at other points we're able to eat it without any problems. But when the gut microbiome is out of balance, you're really kind of changing the immune response effectively in the gut, and therefore certain foods might be triggering to you. So there'll be many people that will suddenly become very sensitive to, it could be wheat or dairy, or it could be the FODMAP foods. They can be a real issue as well, or foods that are high in histamine. So if you are experiencing some of these symptoms, I do recommend that people maybe look into that and get a test.
Yeah, interesting. I mean, I know from my own experience actually that when my hormones started to go haywire, I became much more sensitive to gluten and wheat. And I noticed that I would just get kind of general puffiness everywhere. And, even just doing simple things like going from regular bread to sourdough bread, which is more easily digested, that actually made a big difference to me. But, thinking back then, this is going back sort of 10 years or more, I didn't actually relate it to hormonal changes, going on in the gut.
Yeah.
Are there things that are perceived as perhaps being good for us that actually may be having a detrimental effect? How careful do we need to be really in times of hormonal change with what we're eating?
Yeah, I think it's a really good question, because if you spend any time on Instagram or TikTok, you will be told you must go and eat this food, and fermented foods, I think, are the kind of the big food of the moment as well. And a lot of people go, oh, okay, well, I'll pile that on then. I'll start having loads of kimchi with my lunch every day. And for some people, they don't actually like it. So if you're not enjoying it, I wouldn't recommend that you eat it, because I think food and pleasure are supposed to be quite connected as well. But also there will be some people that can't tolerate it. So there are certain bacteria and enzymes that those bacteria produce in your gut that are responsible for the digestion and breakdown of that type of food. And if you're lacking in those enzymes, that food is going to be very hard for you to digest and pass through. So actually, you could end up making your symptoms worse. You could end up being more bloated, more uncomfortable than you were before you had that fermented food in your diet. So that's just sort of one example of the type of food I think people need to be cautious with, and don't go from 0 to 100 overnight.
I think that's really good advice, isn't it? You know, for anybody who's not used to having fermented food. I mean, I'm a huge fan of kefir, for example. And, you know, I always say start small. If your gut's not used to it and you've never had any of these types of foods before, you know, just a little bit, just a spoonful of kefir, and then kind of build up so that you don't sort of overload it. Why then is gut health so key for midlife women, especially?
So gut health is really foundational to all of our health. It affects every process, every system in the body, and 70% of our immune system is in our gut. Yeah. So if you think about that, your gut is really providing one of the biggest lines of defense for anything that's coming into your body. So if your gut isn't healthy, then you're going to be more prone to picking up bugs and viruses, or being affected by foods that you eat as well, that maybe on other occasions wouldn't affect you so much if your gut was much stronger. Yeah. Your gut is involved also in the regulation of your mood, of your bone health. It affects your joints. And we talked about some of the symptoms that are kind of really common around food sensitivities, but actually it's not just what's happening in the gut, it's also what's happening in the body. So if you've got joint pain, I would really recommend you look at whether foods are potentially contributing to that, because it can be a really big factor in that particular symptom.
That's so interesting, isn't it? You know, it really does all come back to the gut. So can we talk a little bit about specifically your product, Better Gut? I guess it says what it does on the label there. What are the ingredients in this that you've specifically chosen?
Yeah, so we've got 6 different strains of bacteria in the product, and we've chosen those strains because of their efficacy for very common symptoms that women will experience during menopause. And that's covering everything from gut symptoms all the way through to vaginal and urinary health as well. So you've got Lactobacillus acidophilus, which is really effective at improving the health of our vaginal lining and also protective against UTIs. Bifidobacterium lactis, that is helpful for hot flushes and night sweats. Then we have Bifidobacterium bifidum, which is for that kind of regularity of the bowels, and also reducing constipation. Lactobacillus rhamnosus, which I think is one of your favourites.
Love a bit of rhamnosus. I've been taking rhamnosus for a long time, actually. You know, I always look for it in a good probiotic supplement. If it contains rhamnosus, then it kind of gets a big tick from me.
Yes. And that one is really powerful for helping with that mood regulation, helping with the stress response, and also for vaginal health as well. Yeah. And then the Hawaru strain as well, which is important for immunity, helping with bloating and reducing inflammation. And inflammation actually is such a big factor in perimenopause and menopause, especially during that peri stage. The body goes into a more inflamed state. And I think this is probably at the root of some of the symptoms that we then experience. So when the body has high inflammation, you're more likely to feel achy, your joints will hurt, you're going to feel tired, your energy is going to be lower, your immunity is going to be compromised, you're in that kind of stress state as well. So when we can reduce inflammation, we just improve everything. Our pain levels go down. And we've had so many customers that have come to us because of menopause symptoms, but also have long-term bowel health issues like ulcerative colitis. And their symptoms have just improved so much by taking this product, not just from a menopause perspective, but also from the pain and the inflammation they have from a condition like that.
Love it. I have to say, you know, I'm a genuine fan, and I can well believe all the good testimonials. It's just got so many upsides to it. Yeah. How often then should we be taking this? And you know, is there a particular time of day, for example, that's better than others?
So it's designed to be taken daily, so just 1 tablet a day, and it's very strong. So we've got 50 billion CFUs, which is colony forming units in each tablet.
Billion?
And That is very strong when
Yeah.
you compare it to what else you might see on the shelves. Typically you might see 3 to 10. If you're working with a nutritionist, you might get up to 20 billion in a good quality probiotic. But the 50 billion, I think, is what makes it so effective so quickly, actually, for so many people. And when something works quickly, you're more inclined to want to take it and to feel motivated as well to remember. So I like to take mine last thing at night. I keep it by my bed,
Oh,
and I
really?
take that with a magnesium glycinate, and that's my kind of nighttime routine.
Yeah.
For other people, they want to take
Nice.
it first thing in the morning when they brush their teeth. I think it's however you remember.
Okay.
And just worth noting that all food supplements, it says take with food, because that's the legality around being a food supplement. But actually, I think it's better not to take it with food. I think it's better to have a clear run through the gut and allow it to do its job to repopulate and replant the good bacteria.
I love
in the
that
gut
idea
lining.
actually of having it by the bed, so you don't forget,
Yes.
and it makes sense
Yeah.
that the gut is perhaps a little bit emptier. Hopefully there's been a gap before
Yeah.
you get into bed, from when you finished your last mouthful of food, and it makes sense, as you say, to
Yes.
have that clear run, if you like, to get the gut
Yeah.
bacteria populated. And actually we know that the gut does so much work, doesn't it, while we sleep and while we're resting, that actually to give it the good
Definitely.
ingredients to use, does make sense. How can we make sure then that
Absolutely.
we are really
Yeah.
getting the most out of this supplement and optimizing the good gut bugs? For example, are there things that we should be eating alongside it during the day, or
Hmm.
anything that we should be particularly avoiding
Yeah.
to protect the gut bugs so that we don't knock them out with something that we're ingesting?
Yeah, definitely. So I think there's a couple of things there to consider. So first is what you just mentioned about what our gut does when we're not eating. So when we go into that fasted state, especially overnight, you need at least 12 hours overnight. Your
Yeah.
migrating motor complex, which is like the street cleaners of your gut, they get in and do their job. So they start to sweep away all of the debris, all of the unwanted cells and toxins and any leftover foods that shouldn't be there. And they also help with the balance of bacteria and stop any of the less beneficial bacteria from proliferating and growing. So first kind of big tip is go into that fasted state every night. Give yourself at least 12 hours between your last meal and your first meal, and you'll feel a benefit from that. You can take that into your day as well. So not snacking really
Yes.
helps the gut to do the kind of repair and rebuild. Whereas when we're grazing all the time, we're digesting, and therefore we're not repairing and we're not building in the way that we could do if we had the gaps. And then on top of all of that, it's, I think, really about fiber, giving your body the fiber that it needs to feed the good bacteria. So when we ingest sources of fiber from plant foods, so vegetables and nuts and seeds and grains, etc., our body will ferment some of that fiber and turn it into short chain fatty acids, which then provide so many benefits to our body. It improves the gut-brain communication, it improves immunity, it helps with all of the repair and rebuild in the gut lining, helps protect us against those food sensitivities. So it's really important to include the fibre from that perspective, but also to help bulk up the stools and remove the toxins from the body.
Yeah.
And remembering that the gut is responsible for what's coming in and also what's coming out. It's got that kind of multifaceted job to make sure that we get the benefit from what we're eating and absorbing, and also then removing toxins and, importantly, used hormones as well from our body.
Right. Absolutely fascinating. Brilliant. I've learned a lot there, and I'm sure a lot of other people have. So I encourage comments below here. Where can people go to find out more about Better Gut?
So you can go to our website, which is thebettermenopause.com, and you can find out more information there. Also on our social channels, we're pretty much everywhere at the Better Menopause.
Excellent. And I know that you've given us a very generous discount, 15% off with the code LizLoves, our lovely code. And you get a free gut health download with lots of helpful ideas. You've got recipes, you've got an eating plan. Thank you very much for that. We really appreciate it. And well, thank you very much, Joanna, for joining us today. Sharing your knowledge, a flatter, happier tum for all of us. That's what we want,
Yes.
especially at this time of year. Everybody watching this, listening,
More
what do you
energy.
think?
Yeah.
More energy. Let's go for it. Less bloating.
Yeah.
Pop comments below if you're listening to this. What do you think? Do you take a supplement? Are you going to be trying this one? Are you tempted? Don't forget to use your discount. Let me know in the comments. Do share with your friends. You can click subscribe, of course, to ensure that you never miss another episode from me and from my team. Until we're back here next time, have a very great, healthy week. Go well. Bye-bye.